Are you wondering what triggers anxiety in your brain? What the biochemicals or neurological things that are going on in your brain to trigger anxiety? If this is something you're interested in, keep watching. We're going to get into the details. We'll discuss 7 different neurochemicals that could be affecting your brain negatively to create this pattern, and some of the different patterns that may predispose one to having higher anxiety levels, being triggered more often to these persistent emotions of anxiety. We're all about helping you gain deeper knowledge and understanding of what's going on in your body. That's why we produce these videos. So hopefully this edition gets you a little bit closer towards that aim. I also wanted to point out that sometimes when I'm producing these videos and content, that sometimes I get a slight thing wrong, like quoting something, a stat or a name of something. And so there's a corresponding blog article on our website, swintegratedmedicine/blog, that has a lot more detail, and we'll correct those mistakes if there are any. It doesn't happen that often, but sometimes it does, and the blog article will correct for those. So I also wanted to point out that if you like this type of information, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you watching. If you do have any questions about any of the content, either here or on the blog, that's what the comment section is for, to ask those questions. So again, thanks for watching, and let's dig into it. Okay, so we're going to list out 7 different categories of different biochemical molecules that have activity in the brain that can, when they're imbalanced, will tend to cause some anxiety. And so I'm just going to list them out here and give some sort of caveats of how they fit into, thought and mood. And then we're going to talk about how sometimes they get imbalanced, where you have excess of certain ones and deficiency of the ones that are kind of calming. So first we'll start with the stimulating ones. So biogenic amines or amines are generally going to be more stimulating to the body. And when I'm making these references, it's sort of a broad stroke. So think about these as in general terms, because sometimes even the amines can have sedating properties or down-regulating properties, but in general you're going to have an upregulation in the central nervous system from these. So on the amine side, we have, we can put all these into one category, even though they're 3 different molecules: epinephrine, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So that would be considered number 1. We use this in. And then you have serotonin would be number 2, kind of different shape, different molecule, different base. And then histamine as well would be number 3. So far we got 1, 2, 3. And then we'll just step back and talk a little bit about each of these. So dopamine and epinephrine are generally stimulating, so they help you focus in on tasks. They can help you make decisions or come to conclusions about things. And histamine is generally used, it's more used in the immune system, but can also tend to be upregulated when there's a lot of inflammation, and high amounts of histamine can be really stimulating to the brain excessively. So that's why, when you take antihistamines, they block the histamine from binding to the receptor, so it kind of generally will calm people down most of the time. Serotonin, of course, is the site of activity of many antidepressant medications. SSRIs are serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So they allow for more serotonin in a specific part of the brain where you're going to have more activity of that serotonin molecule. And so that generally is can be calming and can be sedating at the same time. Some SSRIs are used more for anxiety, and some are used for depression. So serotonin can have kind of a calming effect, but it can also be really stimulating when there's excess amounts of it. Serotonin syndrome, for instance, is when there's excess serotonin and you have all these excitatory kind of responses from that. And so those are all amines, and they're all cleared through similar pathways, which we'll get into in a second. So those are all the stimulating ones so far. And then number 4 on that list would be glutamate. So glutamate is main function in the brain is to connect neurochemical or connects synapses in the brain and has a overall excitatory effect on the brain. And too much glutamate is being associated with a lot of cause for anxiety and even major depressive disorder. So recently they approved ketamine for the treatment of major depressive disorder, and part of the way ketamine works is by inhibiting the binding of glutamate. So by reducing glutamate, sometimes that can have a major positive effect on the brain, reducing anxiety. So we'll come back to that a little bit as far as like what might be causing excess glutamate levels in your brain. But so there we have the amines, glutamate, and then that takes care of most of the stimulating neurotransmitters. And then there's also neuropeptides. Now, these are not traditional neurotransmitters, but they can act like neurotransmitters. And these are things like endorphins and enkephalins. So opiates are basically a different type of endorphin, same type of thing. They bind to the opiate receptors, but can sort of have similar overlapping effects as endorphins. And we know endorphins, when you go out for a long hike or a long run, you get that runner's high. This is kind of the endorphin effect. And some people can be deficient in these, and they kind of have more of like a mood stabilizing effect overall. So they're not necessarily stimulating or sedating, and they can have some overlapping effect with the immune system. So there's a lot of overlap there. CBD oil probably works on the endorphin and enkephalin kind of pathways as well. And then also wanted to mention acetylcholine, which is more stimulating than it is sedating. And this one has to do with like memory and making synapses with memories recall and things like that. And then the last one is kind of covers the calming or sedating category, and there's really not much that we have in our brains that have this effect. GABA is the main calming neurotransmitter in the brain, and to a lesser extent, glycine, which is just an amino acid, but it can have calming effects on the brain as well. So GABA and glycine are two of the main calming neurotransmitters. So next we'll talk a little bit about what sort of things are going on in the body to shift the balance of not enough of that sedation or too much of the stimulating. So hopefully that was helpful in giving you a deeper understanding of what might be going on in your brain to shift the relative balance in some of those biochemicals that will tend to trigger that anxiety in your brain. If you do have any questions about anything that was raised here, then leave it in the comment section. And if you have any general comments, you can leave them there as well. Hopefully you liked the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.